talk about that.
Well, welcome everyone again. Thank you for being here this morning. It's my privilege to introduce our spotlight speaker today, Tristin Chambers with Replay. So I'm going to let him take it over and share his story.
Well, Perk, thank you for allowing me to speak. It's a great pleasure for sure. My background for the last 11 years has been really in the online content and entertainment industry. Back in the early days of the internet, I discovered YouTube, fell in love with it, and really started building an audience for myself over the years, primarily in the gaming niche, but eventually branched out into other things. And over the years, I've also built a few other businesses, a few social and gaming businesses, which are still going to this day. But out of that, over time, as I briefly mentioned before we started this conversation, I'm originally from Santa Monica. The entertainment industry is something I have a deep passion and love for. And I think really over the last few years with both the transformations in streaming and the way that we consume content, I really took both a fan approach and also sort of a differentiated stance on where's content these days and how are people consuming it and the types of content. And really what Replay is it's part of a larger group called GRFK, which I can speak a little bit to later. But Replay is a independent entertainment production or creative house where we create our own intellectual property, our own digital series and novels, and turn those into scripted audio novels, eventually down the line, hopefully television and merchandise and all sorts of different things. And it's been a fun journey over the last 2 years. Originally, what's funny is I envisioned it as a streaming service for indie content. And I think what the saving grace was is that Quibi had come out and failed within 8 months. And so, when I was putting together the original business plan for this, the first goal was just last longer than Quibi. I'm like, if I can last longer than the greats of Meg Whitman and Jeffrey Katzenberg on something, I'm like, I think I'm on the right track at least. And it's been fun getting to see the evolution of the business. We have multiple projects in various stages of development, more targeted towards Gen Z and millennials, this sort of coming of age audience, at a time when the big entertainment players like HBO Max, Freeform, the CW are all leaving that audience behind. So there's a major gap now, and I think who better to try and capture that audience than somebody in that demographic. And so it's been a fun journey, a lot of trials and tribulations the last few months, especially with the writers and the actors strike, which I have a lot of friends in Hollywood and New York and other places who are still on the picket line. So I'm hoping the best for them. But that's the story of Replay, at least to itself. And then GRFK, it's sort of a independent content and media engine. I took a lot of the lessons I learned over the last 10, 11 years of creating businesses, whether talent agencies or online content and advising creators and entertainment companies, and figuring how to make the most value and really do something that isn't really being done. And so I think comprised of the fact we have a talent agency, our own content and culture studio, our own in-house marketing group that we're in the process of launching right now, it's actually been a very fun time trying to juggle 5 or 6 pillars all at the same time. So that's the short story, I guess.
Can you tell us what went into the decision to launch this business here and not in California?
Yeah, you know, I've been fortunate to call Lincoln home for 9 years, and you know, the thing is, I think there's a little bit of nuance to, you know, trying to launch an entertainment business in a Burbank or a New York, because all the major players have a dominant share there, whereas Lincoln is really, I think, in this transformative era where you have it becoming a very modern city, you know, obviously UNL and you know, more people in that, you know, 18 to 34 demographic that are choosing to stay here or moving here, realizing how great of a place it is, and also just realizing that while there's not a lot of resources for entertainment, there should be. And so I think that was part of it, but also just, I think one of my biggest things that I've learned from my career, if it hasn't been done, it's because someone hasn't tried to do it. And, you know, I would sleep better at night knowing I tried something and it maybe worked or didn't work as well as I wanted to, rather than being awake at night going, you didn't try it at all.
Has there been a really impactful piece of advice or tool that you've used along your way?
You know, that's a good question. Looking back at all the mentors I've had, I think, you know, one of the biggest pieces of advice I was given was from a mentor of mine who basically told me most 24-year-olds think they know everything in the world today, and we really don't. And you've got to scratch and claw and try to learn everything and sort of be both scrappy at the same time. And you know, another good mentor of mine is Scott Henderson, who runs M Motion, who I'm probably being honest, I probably pitched the idea of this, you know, way back during, you know, the pandemic. So, but you know, he's been someone who I've leaned on consistently for different ideas, and you know, a lot of the M Motion team as well, when I've spoken to them about, you know, the trajectory of the business. And so, you know, things have been, I try to align myself with good people that I can bounce ideas off of, but also knowing that they're not afraid to give critical feedback. And I think that's the most important thing, is us as people, we tend to shun feedback if we don't think it works. And I think you have to just be a little bit confident in yourself.
Agree. We need people who are going to support us, but also are going to challenge what we're doing and offer constructive advice.
Well, there's that very famous quote: "You've got to tear someone down to build them back up." And I've always believed that. You know, I told a lot of people that have talked to me over the years, whether in person or online, it's, you know, I grew up having autism, and so I have had to work 10 times as hard just to be accepted when I walk into a room with other people. And you know, that challenge in life of, you know, growing up and being bullied for having autism, and you know, for being a little bit you know, forward thinking and trying to do something that most kids my age wouldn't do, I really had to say, okay, it's clear some people doubt me, let's go prove them wrong.
Love that. So, when you were growing up, were you doing entrepreneurial things before you did Replay?
Yeah, you know, I grew up with business on all different sides of my family, so I always knew that there was a part of me that was going to be doing my own business. when I started making content 11 years ago, I did it out of a love for just creativity and a little bit of just wanting to share a passion of gaming. A year after I started doing that in 2013, I built a social and gaming collective which has recruited talent from all over the world and helped build their careers. Still going strong to this day, still bootstrapped, still running it myself, which has been fun. It's been humbling. This year was the 10-year anniversary, and so I have a friend of mine that I used to hang out with on the East Coast when I lived there, and earlier this year he sent me the original business ideas that I had, and it really hit me. It took me a moment to be like, first, why do you still have this 10 years later when I don't? And secondly, like, just realizing, like, that was 10 years ago. And it's like I'm 24 now, and I wrote most of that when I was in a middle school classroom just doing whatever came to mind. But, I think for me, I'm never comfortable just doing one thing, and I think that there's so many different fun ways you can create a business, whether it's creating a social and gaming collective, whether it's creating a talent agency, whether it's creating a launch pad to help other businesses and help give advice to others. So, I don't take it for granted. But I definitely had a lot of experience before creating Replay that I could sort of leverage and look at what went right, what went wrong, what are the things that I, in hindsight, wish I had done better.
You mentioned being involved in multiple sides of the business right now all at the same time. Is there a particular part of the business that you really enjoy doing? And is there one that maybe is more challenging for you?
As it pertains to Replay, I think the most challenging is the creative and actually conceptualizing the projects that we want to do it. Because there's sort of the fan in me who's like, let's try and make something similar to House of the Dragon or Handmaid's Tale or The 100, and then there's the part of me that has to step back and go, well, that's something you might want to do. You might have to think a little bit different. And so whether that's creating something in the murder mystery genre or something or more supernatural like. So I think that's been fun. As it pertains to some of the other businesses, I think the biggest thing I love is just getting to connect with other people and really help try to grow them and try to really leave the gaming space and the content space individually better than I found it. That's always been my sort of thing, is it's like, if I 70, 80 years later am looking back at my life, it's like, what impact did I have? And whose lives did I change? Who did I give opportunities to? What did they make of those opportunities? And also, what are the things that I did that maybe inspired somebody? Early on in the mid 2010s, women in gaming was not a real big thing, and I was a very big person championing, we need more female content creators and live streamers. We need more female competitive rosters, and not just in North America, but all over the world. We need more people who are open to diversity and inclusion at a time when there's so much negativity in the world. And so, those are the things that I look forward to the most when it comes to running a business, is just, I guess, how much impact I can create.
We ask every speaker this question. Do you have a favorite local business that you like to shop with, or a favorite local restaurant?
That is a good question. I mean, if we were having this conversation during the pandemic, Old Chicago was one of my favorite places to go to. I'd consistently have meetings there with people, or just if I was walking through the Haymarket, I'm always like, oh, let's go down to Old Chicago. You know, I think it's very tough these days because, like, you know, I don't go outside that often, and so, like, you know, it's a really fun challenge. I think one of my favorite places recently I went to was Beer House. There was a big startup gathering there a couple weeks back, and I enjoyed that. I've occasionally gone to the Mill and some of the other coffee places downtown. As far as favorite places to shop, you know, I'm really big into vinyl and a big music lover in general. I've been fortunate to do concert photography and work with record labels and things of that nature. And there used to be a place next to the Rococo that was called Freedom Rock, which is a record store. And I'd probably go in there occasionally, at least once or twice a month, and walk out with a vinyl. You know, which is funny. I saw a TikTok the other day where somebody was realizing that, you know, my generation are like rediscovering what cassettes and vinyl and CDs and like floppy disks are, and so it's been fun, like being like, one, that's cool that people are discovering this, and then it's like, am I that old? You know, so but I mean, those are my favorite places, I guess, to go to by far, you know, to either eat at or to shop at, you know. I try to engage a lot with small businesses, whether it's here in Lincoln or Omaha. I just went to a concert up in Council Bluffs a couple weeks ago, and bought a few records from a record store there, so that was fun. And you know, that's I guess that's sort of me in a nutshell.
Great. Does anybody have questions or comments for Tristin?
What does your staff and replay kind of look like?
So primarily it's myself, and then I have a few advisors and people who I've worked with on a freelance basis. And it's mainly, you know, designed that way where if they want to go focus on their own content or their own business ventures, they can do that without having to worry about conflicts of interest or, you know, spreading themselves, you know, way too thin. But, you know, typically I'd say, you know, it's really a 3 to 4 person team most of the year. But, you know, I try to keep things very small and tight-knit, because I've learned over the journey of my career that there's people I can trust and that I know are going to push me to do 10 times better than I feel I can and lead me to that path. And so that's sort of what things look like.
What's next?
That's a good question. You know, there's a lot of different things going on at both Replay and GRFK. We're working on a lot of different projects, mostly in the scripted audio space. We're working with a few independent book publishing companies to start putting out things most likely in the beginning to middle of next year. We've been fortunate to establish relationships with a lot of big production companies. Earlier this summer, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to invest into a company called Skybound, which is the creators of the Walking Dead franchise. And so having now connections to, you know, their investor team and some of their entertainment staff It's been fun, and we plan on reaching out to them soon and sharing a few ideas, and seeing if something works out. We've been very focused on podcasts because I think that's a great medium to get into. So whether that's us launching our own or helping other people launch theirs and really build a independent podcast network, I think is great. We've been launching a talent agency the last couple months with sort of the guise of it's a talent agency for creators and by creators and created by a creator, and so we've been having discussions with talent all over the world, and it's been fun. And quickly signed a good roster of talent over the last few months. So yeah, firing on all cylinders, I guess. But other than that, I try not to think about what's next. I'm someone who very much, if I see an idea, I immediately jump at it. So it's never, like a traditional roadmap of 6 months from now we're going to be doing this, and 12 months from now we're going to be doing that. It's very much elastic.
Can you explain scripted audio and what that is?
Yeah, so, and sorry for cutting you off there, I apologize. So scripted audio, it's essentially like if you did a television show, but only in an audio format. And so like Audible, which is owned by Amazon, they've been really good at doing this, where they've got an entire production team just creating original content with studio partners and independent production companies. So whether that's sort of sci-fi novel or just other types of genre creations, all the way to other types of stories. So again, sort of the gist is, if you took a television show, the same audio effect you would hear, the same tones and things like that, but in a audio format. It's actually really fun. I think it's one of the few content types out there that isn't being done enough of. And I love it. Like, there's something that's great about sitting down and watching an hour-long drama or horror show or whatever, and then there's something great about just being able to plug in my stereo or put in a pair of earbuds and sort of just block out the world and listen to something that's sort of a mix of the two. But yeah, that's sort of what scripted audio is like.
So is it comparable to what they had in like the 1930s, the old, like the Gunsmokes or your Green Hornet? Is that what you're describing?
So I'm not entirely knowledgeable on old entertainment trends and things like that from that time period, but it's more of, I think, with scripted audio, which is what I assume you're referring to. I think it's very much, if you took like an audio book and mixed it with the elements of a television show. So, instead of just hearing somebody, talking, you have dialogue between voice actors. You have those sounds that you would hear, whether it's a car driving in the distance or a blizzard happening or, some kind of other scenario. And I think it's really fun to listen to that type of content, which is why I thought, hey, there's not enough people doing it, and there needs to be more of it.
So it is, you should listen to some of them because it's a great way of using your imagination, because it's like, okay, you see the car coming, you hear the car coming, you hear the car door open and close. And I love those for the fact that you're using the imagination.
Exactly. I think so many people growing up these days lack creativity and imagination and like the ability to just escape from the world and just sort of, you know, transport into a world that feels like their own. And I think like that's why today a lot of pop culture shows have such like big fan bases, whether it's, you know, a long-standing franchise like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, whether it's Game of Thrones, whether it's you know, more soap opera, or, you know, soap or teen, you know, drama shows these days have such a big cult following because they rely on a lot of the same techniques and a lot of the same formats, I think, and, you know, I know there's a few that have explored even, you know, diving further in sort of the audio cinematic space.
So you mentioned Audible
Yeah.
is doing it. Is there anybody else that we would recognize doing it?
I know Audible is sort of the big number one that's been doing it. I've been hearing whispers that Spotify might be doing it. You know, they've been scaling back on doing podcast deals recently. But they've also been really expanding into doing audiobooks. They recently announced a thing, part of Spotify Premium, where they'll give a certain amount of credits for audiobooks on a given month to premium users. So I imagine that eventually, with just the capital financially and strategically that Spotify has, they could do it. I don't doubt that eventually you'll see maybe some of the bigger players, like a Disney or a Warner Brothers, do something in that vein. Actually, I think Warner Brothers actually a few years ago did, I forget what company they made the arrangement with. It might have been Audible as well, but you know, they went to an entertainment company and said, we want to license our DC characters and some of our other franchises to create audio series. And so I think it's fun. You know, it also alleviates a lot of the pressures of filming a traditional television show or film, because you can write out all the scripts and everything, and then just have it acted out in a audio booth, and then go from there. But I only hear whispers and rumblings from time to time, and sort of make calculated guesses of what I think companies are going to do, and then hopefully my batting average works out in the end. But no, Audible is I think the biggest one. I'd love for YouTube to do it. I think they're such a great platform. They used to do original streaming and films and things like that. And with them having a new CEO, I think it'd be a great idea. YouTube's been a place where so many I think genre-defining concepts have taken form. Whether it's I always mention this, the first web show on the internet was created by a doctor, lawyer, and a screenwriter on YouTube. So it's always fun just seeing what gets built out there. But hopefully there's more of it. But yeah, Spotify and Audible are the big two right now, and hopefully there's more.
Any other questions?
I'm kind of curious, do you do creative writing type stuff or just producing?
Yeah, so we do both, actually. So, and I think that's what's sort of fun, is that rather than having, bring in a separate crew to do all the audio and mixing and, putting things together, I've been fortunate where I'm really good at creative writing. I love it. If you told me, go home and write, 20 pages just as a, spec write and for, whatever idea comes to mind, I'd probably be spending all day doing it, and just tweaking and critiquing my own work. And then there's the fun of it where I love, being able to do auditions with people and getting to help coach people of, hey, this is how this character would say something, or this is how this character would react. And then, at the same time, putting all that together in audio is fun. I think as we get to, more physical productions eventually down the line, I think the creativity will only get a lot better. I'm always someone who I love being hands-on. I love being visual with things, and just have a knack for it. So, but yeah, right now we do both sides of the coin, so it works out well.
Well, thank you, Tristin, so much for being here. And feel free, everybody, to stick around, mingle. If you've got questions you want to talk to Tristin about individually, I'm sure he'd be willing to do that. And we invite you all back next week. We'll have Lynette Sorrentino with Chaos to Boss as our spotlight speaker. And hope you have a great Thursday. Thank you.
How do we find